Okay, this is problem 1 of exercise 4J. For each graph, write down the coordinates of the vertex and the equation of the axis of symmetry. Um, Above that, I put a note. I said, what value of x makes the part in the parentheses 0? That is the x of the vertex because it makes the y as small or large as possible. Okay, so if you already understand that, then this is really easy. What I'm saying there is, okay, when you have a parabola, the parabola the parabola goes. It starts at the top, and then it. Let me move over here. Okay. Okay, so a parabola goes down like that, and so like the lowest point is here, right? The y, this is the lowest y gets. So if you want to make y really small, what x do you use? Well, the x you use to make y really small is going to be the vertex. So let's look over here. How do we make y really small? Well, if we look at this side, um, how can we make this as small as possible? Well, since this is squared, this part of this cannot be any smaller than 0, right? We can't make this any smaller than 0 because if you square it, even if we make let's make it a negative 1,000. Well, it's going to get squared, and then it's not going to be negative anymore. It's going to be a huge number. What we want to do is make a really small number. So how can we make this as small as possible? Well, if we make it 0. So how do we make this 0? Well, if we put negative 3 in for x, then it's going to be 0. And I'm going to zoom in a lot here because in my last video I noticed that it was not so easy to see. Can I zoom in more than that? Zoom in? Yes, I can. Okay, and it's now I think maybe you can see it better. Okay, but I'm going to give you another way to think about this in case that was confusing. So if that was confusing, forget that. And we're going to go back to the way we did the first problem. So we're going to make a table with x and y, and we're going to put values in to see exactly where the vertex is. Okay, so for example, let's start with a negative 5. We're going to put a negative 5 in here. If we put negative 5 in here, then that's negative 5 plus 3. That gives us a negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 2, so 2 squared minus 2 is 2. So if x is negative 5, then y is 2. And if you put in these other values like negative 4, if you put negative 4 in, you get negative 1 squared, which is 1 minus 2, which is negative 1. Okay, and then if you put in negative 3, like we said, negative 3 plus 3 is 0, minus 2, negative 2. And like we said before, negative 3 is like the lowest point possible on the parabola. So the next number we put in, negative 2 plus 3, that gives you 1. 1 squared is 1, minus 2 is negative 1. So you can see like the lowest point in the parabola was negative 2. So x equals negative 3, y equals negative 2, that's the lowest point. Okay, if that's the lowest point in the parabola, hey, what do you know, that's the vertex. So they asked us for the coordinates of the vertex. The coordinates of the vertex is negative 3. It's, oops, let's go back to the pen. That's the point negative 3 comma negative 2. Okay, and we can also find that by graphing. So let's do it using graphing. We're just going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to put this equation into the GDC, and it's already prepared for the GDC, but it's good because it has y on the left, and the rest of it's on the right. So I'm just going to I use enter, and I'm going to make that black equal sign white, and then I'm just going to, because that was from our first problem. So I already typed this problem in. I put parentheses, and then I typed this, plus 3, close parentheses, and then I press this, and then I press the arrow, and then I did minus 2, and that put this equation in there. And so now I'm going to graph this one, so I'm going to press enter to make it black, do you see? And then I'm going to graph. And it's going to graph this parabola. And now I want to see, okay, what's the equation, what's the coordinates of the vertex? Well, there's a couple ways I can do that. I could use trace, and then I could use the arrow, and then I would go until, oh, do you see how the cursor's over here? It's actually to the right, so I need to move to the left. And I could get some idea of what the vertex would be. It's about here, right? So it's about negative 2.97, y equals negative 1.99. And, you know, in math studies problems, usually they're nice whole numbers, so this is probably negative 3, and this is probably negative 2, and what do you know, that's what it is. But since we can't be sure, what we can do is we could do a second table, and that'll give us values here, counting by ones. Okay, so you can see that the lowest point is negative 2 in terms of y. On the left, it's negative 1. On the right, it's negative 1. So this is the vertex, negative 3 comma 2, negative 3 comma negative 2. So we get it again this way. And then finally, there's one more way to do it, which is on the graph, we could figure out what the minimum point of this graph is. And we could do that with second calc, because second calc gives us all kinds of good information like zeros, etc. So let's find the minimum of the graph, and that is the vertex, right? So the left bound is saying, okay, give me a point to the left of the minimum, definitely to the left of the minimum. Okay, so I'm saying that point's definitely to the left of the minimum. I'm going to give you a point to the right of the minimum, definitely to the right of the minimum. That's definitely to the right, enter. Okay, so yeah, that's my guess. And it tells me, hey, negative 2.9999, y equals negative 2. And since it doesn't, it uses a kind of an approximation, so it doesn't exactly give you the exact right answer, but negative 2.9999, obviously, that's, for IB Math Studies, that's negative 3, and y equals negative 2. So we got the vertex 3 different ways. We did it by hand. We used the minimum function on second calc, or you could just use table. Remember table, you just go like that. Second graph, and there's the negative 3, negative 2. That's the vertex. Okay. The other thing they asked was the equation of the axis of symmetry. And once you know the vertex, the axis of symmetry is very easy, because you know the axis of symmetry is just the line that is going through the parabola, right through the mirror image line, right there. Okay. So so they're saying, what is the equation of this line? Well, vertical lines have this equation. Vertical lines don't have a typical equation like y equals 3x plus 1. Okay, that's the equation for a line that is diagonal. Okay, but lines that are vertical have a really funny looking equation, which is x equals something, and this x here is going to be equal to negative 3, because the vertex is negative 3 comma negative 2. Okay, so the equation for the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 3, which is the vertical line which goes exactly through the vertex. Okay, now getting back to what I said before, now when you put it in the special form, which is a squared, and you have an x plus or minus a certain number here, and then you have this extra number out on the end, when you put it in the special format, this is making it so that you can figure out the vertex just by looking at it. Okay, so if you're pretty good at memorizing like equation formats, then you could say, oh, this format with parentheses x plus something, parentheses squared minus something, this format automatically gives you the vertex. So, and how do you get the vertex? Well, you look at the first number and you look at the second number. And what is it about the first number and second number that's related to the vertex, which we already calculated? Well, the first number and the vertex is negative 3. What's similar here? Well, there's a 3. There's not a negative 3, but there's a 3. Oh, what do you know? If you put negative 3 in here, it will cancel out the 3 and you get a 0 here, which minimizes the y. Okay, so we talked about that before. So you get the x-coordinate by trying to minimize y, putting negative 3 into here. Now, how do you get the y? Well, you get the y from this part here. If this part becomes 0, then obviously y is just equal to negative 2, which is what's left. Okay? So that's when you look at this, like you could look at this one, and I'm not going to tell you the answer. You're going to figure that out for yourself. But like, what x do you put in here to make this thing 0? Like, how do you cancel out positive 5? You put in, you know, a number here for x, and that's the x coordinate, okay? And then what would be the y coordinate for the vertex? Well, it's right there. Okay? So you can just look at this and you already have the vertex. So there's many ways you can get the vertex. The easiest way is doing this, but that means that you have to be familiar with this format of the equation.